Setting and managing DMA channels. So DMA channel, again, you used to have to physically set these. Today it's all done automatically. So the function here is available. DMA channel 2 is for a floppy disk only, so we can load that data directly from the floppy disk into the memory and download it directly from the floppy disk down into the, from the memory into the floppy disk. And then we have the ECP available, the first DMA controller, the second sound card, SCSI available. So the SCSI is a small computer systems interface. Again, you could chain a bunch of devices together that had a lot of data handling, like scanners, these old school scanners that were big and clunky with lots of data. Today it's all super fast, super small, compact, because we have so many read and write lines now. And then DMA 7 was available. So 0 to 7 is 8 channels. Don't mix that up. 0 to 7 is 8 channels. So if you get a multiple choice test that says a question that says you have 8 DMA channels, what are they? 1 through 9 or 1 through 7, which is only 7, right? It's only 7. 0 through 7 is 8. So don't mix that up on the test. There's a couple of questions like that. So COM and ports. COM ports, communication port 1, 2, 3, and 4, those were serial ports. The LPTs were printer ports, so the old school serial port, right? So this used to be how we connected everything to the computer with serial ports. And then we had a couple of printers sometimes, or we'd use the printer ports for different things, like a scanner. We used to use the serial port for scanners, but it was a lot of information coming in, just one byte at a time, and it was very slow. So we switched to USB. And now they have, 1, 2, and 3. And now we're on 3, which is very fast. So the COM port 1 is 3F8, the COM port 2 is 2F8, and the interrupt request that goes with it, right? So you used to be able to configure COM port 2 on interrupt 4 or 1. It was pretty common. So you could configure it to any, well not 1, but you could do it on 3 or 4, right? So you can't have all these devices hooked up at once. They can only be used at certain times, so you couldn't have them all hooked up at the same time. So you had 4 COM ports. You could only use 2 at a time. Why? Why could you only use 2 serial ports at the same time? Because you only had 2 interrupts available, 3 and 4, that's it. So you could only have 2 hooked up at the same time. Even though you could have 4 ports on the computer, only 2 things could be hooked up at the same time. Otherwise, you're confusing the CPU. And then with LPT 1 and 2, there were 7 and 5 respectively. You need to know these. You'll see test questions about this. So don't mix these up. This will be on the test. COM ports, COM 1 and 3 share IRQ4. COM 2 and 4 share IRQ3. And you can only use one at a time. COM 3 uses IO port 3E8 to 3EF. COM 1 uses 3F8 to 3FF. You need to write these down on flashcards or something to remember them. You need to know this for the test. COM 4 uses IO port 2E8 and 2EF, and COM 2 uses 2F8 and 2FF. Even though you probably never see this in real life today, we hardly ever use these. Some of your engineers that you work with may use these and they'll know how to configure it on their own. They'll figure it out. It's not something that the support guys will usually have to deal with. LPT ports, local printer ports. So you should use IRQ7 for LPT1, IRQ5 for LPT2. And IRQ5 is typically used with sound cards also. So you couldn't always have 2 printers if you had a sound card also. Devices other than printers can use LPT ports. The USB is taking over many of these parallel designs. And that's true. Configuring expansion cards. So installing expansion cards, you have to read the documentation. This was very important before they told you exactly which IRQs and addresses to use as far as with respect to COM ports and stuff. Again, we don't use these today. But you want to document addresses in DMA and IRQ settings. You need to know because they all have to be mapped out. You don't want to walk up to a computer and then they don't have that documentation anywhere. You got to go physically figure all that out again. That takes a lot of time. You want to keep settings unique and document them. Printer cables. We had this old Centronics 36 pin. You'll never see it. You'll never see it. And then we had the standard 25 pin to computer. Very rarely will you see this. Extremely rare. I haven't seen it in a long time. Everything is different types of USB now. And then we had an IEEE 1284 printer modes. For the test, you need to know these, by the way. There's a standard 25 pin, and we have a Centronics 36 pin. Obviously, the first one is older. And then it is important to configure the correct mode for each printer with respect to printer modes. Each pin assignment corresponds to a specific function. So each pin has a specific function. So for example, we have a 9 pin and a 25 pin. So on the 9 pin, we only use 1, 2, 3, 4 pins. On the 25 pin, we only use 1, 2, 3, 4 pins. Well, what do? Let's look at the 9 pin configuration. The 9 pin configuration, which is a serial port, had pin 3 was to transmit data, or a TD, data sent from the computer, transmitted from the computer. And then we have an RD, which is receive data on pin 2, data sent to the computer. So pin 1 is a data carrier detect. Modem detects signal from another modem. And number 4, the data terminal ready, DTR, data terminal ready, computer is ready to send. So, hey, printer device, I'm ready to send data. And it says, okay, I'm ready. And then the transmit data would go ahead and start transmitting the data. So the TD would light up when the DTR was acknowledged by the printer, which is the data carrier detect. So the DTR goes hot, the data carrier detect comes hot because the printer is saying I'm ready. So the DTR says, hey, you ready? The DCD comes back and says, yep, it's a 1, I'm ready. So the device is acknowledging that it received your, hey, I'm going to send you data. And now it's ready for the data. Now the TD starts going. I'm sending data, sending data, sending data. And then if there's any data to be sent back in the other direction, the RD would be coming back from the other direction. So the DTR, the DCD, it's just which side of the fence you're on, right? Whether you're the device or the printer.